In this video we'll take a look at how to realistically hand sculpt landscapes in Unreal Engine 4, what are the main methods of creating beautiful landscapes and what tools UE4 offers and what techniques you can use to easily create them. We'll go from the most basic concepts to some more complicated that you might not know yet. On the screen you can currently see what we can achieve with a good landscape material and some foliage in combination. This will give us a really nice result. If you want to see more videos in the future like, consider subscribing to stay up to date with everything. Thanks a lot to this month's patrons, I really appreciate the support. And now let's begin the video. First and foremost, let's talk about the two main methods of getting realistic and beautiful landscapes in UE4. The first method is using a pre-made height map. This can be done in a lot of ways. You can take the height map from real life environments. Usually you do this using Google Maps height maps and some other applications to extract them. This is not a video about that, but I'll leave down below a link to an awesome video made by Underscore just about that. Other ways to create height maps is using special programs such as World Creator or World Machine, two powerful tools for awesome and realistic landscapes. Last but not least, you can also hand paint them in a program like Photoshop, GIMP, Krita, but that's going to require a lot more time and effort. The second method of creating landscapes is, of course, hand sculpting them with UE4's built-in tools. Unreal Engine provides a variety of tools to sculpt the terrain such as flattening, smoothing and of course raising and lowering the terrain. These are the most common. You can also use these in combinations with alpha maps, which will sculpt the landscape in a specific way and form accordingly to the alpha map. Alright, now that we have a basic understanding of how to create landscapes, let's take a look at what to do and what to avoid. There are a bunch of things that might look good at first, but coming up with a good landscape is definitely not an easy job. One thing I want to say before continuing is to remember that making a height map in a custom program will always give you a more organic result than hand sculpting, especially with a mouse. But not everyone has money or time to learn such programs, so hopefully this tutorial will be helpful for those. And now, without further ado, let's jump in Unreal Engine 4 and start creating a good landscape using a really neat technique recommended by many people. Okay, so here I am in Unreal Engine 4 in an empty project and in a world in which I only have my third-person character. Now the first thing that we want to do when we enter a level and we want to create it is that we want to create a landscape, of course. To do that, let's go to Modes and go to the middle section, which is the landscape one. Then go to Manage. And here we can set up how we want our landscape to be. These are my settings. The section is 63 by 63, 1 by 1 section, number of components 8 by 8, and overall resolution 500 by 500. Right. So let's create it. And of course you can make this even bigger. I leave down in the description below a link to sizes that Epic recommends for the landscape. Right. Now in order to sculpt this landscape, what you have to do is to go again to Landscape, Sculpt, and here you are going to have all the tools. As I said, the most common are going to be Sculpt, Smooth, Flatten, and Erosion, Noise, and maybe even Ramp. Well, let's see what Sculpt does. So, when I first started out with Unreal Engine 4 and level design in general, I used to sculpt my landscapes only using the sculpting tool. So this means that I could only raise the terrain and lower it. But of course this is not the proper way, because if you want to create a mountain, you will never do it only using the sculpting tool, because you're going to get results like something like this, right? So this is not that good. This is not the proper way of doing it. There is much more that has to be done in order to create good mountains. But of course this tutorial is not about mountains. There are custom tutorials for that as well. This is a general overview of properly sculpting the terrain. Alright, but again, if I wanted to make valleys, I would have lowered the terrain. And I would have gotten similar results to something like this. And of course, this isn't the worst result, but it's not the proper way. We can get a much better result using my preferred technique. So let's go to the Flatten Tool and let's also use this. Let's see how I used, and most people use this when they first start out. Well, they usually just go on and flatten stuff, and they either get like this out of many levels, which is not very good, it's not optimal, or they just get all these sudden raises and hiring in the terrain, which is not what we want. So let's flatten everything, so we get a flat terrain, and let's see how I like to sculpt my terrain. Okay, let's go and choose the sculpting tool, and let's set up the tool first before sculpting it. I like to have my tool strength around 0.4, 0.5, so let's choose 0.4 for this one. Brush size doesn't matter, but the fallout, I like the inner circle to be as close as possible to the outer circle, but not too close. That means that I like to have my brush fallout as low as possible. Okay, so let's start sculpting, right? So this is what I like to do. I like to start sculpting a little bit and get a general idea of how hills look, right? So how the shape is gonna look in the end and how big I want them to be. So usually I get something like this, right? This is not the doesn't really look like a hill or a mountain or anything, which is not great, but that's exactly where we want to get, right? So after sculpting it and after you are somewhat happy with the result, let's go to the Flatten tool. Now again, we can keep these values, but I like to change the tool strength to be 0.2 or 0.3 depending on how big my terrain is. Then I'm going to lower the brush size just so I can control this better. And also, it is very important, make sure you choose to have peak value per apply. This means that the Flatten tool will always update based on the level that you are flattening, right? So it will look something like this. You see it going down. Without it, it's gonna be flat. Alright, so this is what this does. Okay, let's choose it back. And now, let me show you what I like to do. I just go here, make sure I have 2 or 3 levels of height. Okay, for this one I'm going to have only 2. Many. And we will get something like this. And this kinda looks like hills. Of course, this is not playable yet. I cannot get up there. So let's see what we have to do after this. So you probably can see here the 0.0 of the landscape, which my player is right now on, and then the first level of the hills. What I like to do is to get in between these, in the middle, and just press my left mouse button to kinda get in the middle, get a height in the middle of these two. So I'm going to get something like this, and I'm going to continue to do this so I get as many steps as I want and get something that looks natural. Of course, this is not the last step, so it's not gonna look perfect, but let's just do this until we get something that we are happy with. Okay, so you'll just have to really get something that looks good. Make sure that all these steps are not too high, because we will want our player to be able to climb them. Let me move it backwards just so I can better here. Okay, that should be good as well. And let's say that for this tutorial this is enough, right? It doesn't really matter. As much as you continue to do this, you're gonna get better and better results, right? As you saw in the beginning as well in the images, those I really try to flatten them as much as possible. So this should be good for now. If you're now going to try to climb them, probably you're going to find a way. But of course, we are going to have some problems. As you can see on the screen in the center, we are going to have these random spikes. Those are raised vertices, and since the resolution of the landscape isn't too big, these are going to stand out, right? Here as well. How do we fix those? Well, we are going to use the smooth tool. Now be very careful with this tool. The strength shouldn't be too high. I usually like to keep it around 0.1 and 0.2. Let's get in between 0.15. This is a very harsh tool to use. You're going to have immediate effects on your landscape, so make sure don't drag it around, right? You're gonna see how smooth this is going to get. This is not what I want. Okay, then do not mess up, don't mess with the filter kernel radius and neither with the detail smooth. And then with the brush size and fallout, you can use those however you want. I'm going to increase the size and lower the fallout. Now, what I like to do is to just press my left mouse button, do not drag, so I can easily smooth everything out. So let's see, we can see this here being a little bit too abrupt. I'm going to press now, you'll see that it's less abrupt. And if I'm going to continue to do that, you'll easily see changes in how this looks. It's gonna be very smooth and very clean as well. It's going to be very easy for the player to get on top of it, which is exactly what we want. Let's try it out right now. As you can see, very easy to get onto. Then you can jump here perhaps and go faster. So this is pretty much everything that has to be done to get an organic looking landscape. Now of course, what else you can do? You can add a material. So let's do that real quick as well. I have my materials from the procedural ecosystem pack, and I'm going to use the spring instance. Okay, now we are going to start to see some rocks, all this grass, and as well a black material. That is because we have to go to landscapes, paint, and create layers. To create layers, go to each layer, go to this plus sign, go to weight blending layer, and just create. Okay, and now you can see that the first material that we created a weighted blended layer for is going to be assigned on the entire canvas. Let's do that again for all the others. Then we will be able to easily paint them on the landscape. Okay, but now of course every time after we are going to try to paint with something, we are going to have to compile shaders probably. And not in my case, but usually when you first start to paint you will have to. And now you can simply paint around here, you know, get pine materials and whatnot. And you can see how organic this looks with all these rocks, right? Of course, if you do not have a material that automatically paints itself on the landscape, you'll have to do this manually, but it's not that hard. You just need to start getting a feeling where they should be, where the slope is big enough to put rocks. Now, of course, the last step to make this probably the best result is to add some trees. Let's go to trees, pine, foliage tool, and add a random tree. Okay, now we can just paint them. And of course, you can paint them however you want. But this is not a tutorial about the foliage tool. This is just to show how you can create natural landscapes. So as you can see here, by adding more trees and adding rocks as well and other elements, you're going to get a really neat environment, something worth showing off, good for a portfolio. That's pretty much everything we have to do inside our Unreal Engine. And that's it for this video. Thanks a lot for watching until the end, I really appreciate it. Let me know down below if you have any other questions regarding the tutorial and I'll make sure to answer them. If you want to see more videos in the future like this one, consider subscribing to stay up to date with everything. Big shout out to Xeon, Donald Anderson, Kamasutra Industries, Andrew Millspog, Nino, Daniel Moore, Diego Balarezo, Bader Al-Kahtani and Rodu for the awesome support this month. Once again, thanks a lot for watching and I'll catch you in the next one.